Welcome to Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mark, and Christian Dryden of The Ritualists joins us for this episode. A lot of times I'll ask guests when they had that moment that they thought music could be a career for them. Well, Christian never really had that moment. He just always knew that this is what he was going to do. And he's always been just as influenced by Duran Duran as he has been by Led Zeppelin. And those really different sounds definitely shine through in his music. And we also geek out on a band that we both love and have seen live, but in different phases of their career. So we get into Christian's writing process, and we discuss a particular song on the new album, Baroque and Bleeding, that he thinks may not even be finished yet. He also tells me what song he wrote that kind of came out of a dream. So as you listen to this episode, you may notice that Christian's voice bears resemblance to Simon Le Bon. Well, it turns out that Simon is a fan of the band, which suits them just fine. So check out Baroque and Bleeding wherever you get your music. Follow The Ritualists at @the_ritualists on Instagram and on Facebook at The Ritualists. Follow us at Performance ANX on social media. We accept coffee at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety, and you can buy merchandise at performanceanx.threadless.com. So let's get started with Christian Dryden of The Ritualists on Performance Anxiety, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
This is Christian Dryden from The Ritualists. We have a new record out. It's called Baroque and Bleeding. You should check it out. And I have performance anxiety, and I've been on performance anxiety.
All right. Oh, nice painting.
Thank you.
That's pretty wild. I like that.
That's Dionysus from Pompeii.
Oh my gosh. I'm getting old. I got my progressives on. So I got to look at the bottom through the bottom of my glasses. Like, oh God.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
There you go.
I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I've listened to both albums, and it's so great, man.
Thank you.
You got such a cool sound. It's hard to describe because before a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't familiar with the music, with the band.
Right.
Hearing the music, actually, I've got feelings of nostalgia because it reminds me of so much stuff that I listened to growing up.
Well, there you go.
And
that's good.
It was so cool. So the way I like to kind of start is to find out how you got into music in the first place. Like, was it something that was prevalent in the household growing up, or was it something you struck out on your own to find? Were you playing instruments as a kid? What got you into music in the first place?
Okay, so I was just naturally drawn to music, I think. I mean, as a very young kid, I used to, whatever was on the radio, whatever my parents would play on the radio. I have older sisters, whatever they would play, I was just drawn to. I would put on these little performances for my whole family. Okay. When we'd have like a big family dinner, like a Sunday dinner where my grandparents were there, I would put like a whole routine where I would like lip sync and mime to the songs, and
awesome.
That was really, yeah. And I think that was probably considered pretty sophisticated for like a 5-year-old. But the irony is, like, adult children do that now, and that's all they do. I mean, it's called TikTok, but like I was TikToking, years before there was any TikTok. And,
man.
That was really my first introduction to music, was primarily through my older sister.
Okay.
And she actually had a boyfriend who played the drums, and he was in a punk band.
Oh.
And at the time, I was messing around with the guitar. I might have been about 11 or 12, and I got behind his drum set one day, and I hit the drums, and it was like something magical went off in my brain, and I picked up the drums really quickly. So I started out in bands in high school as a drummer, and I would be like the backing vocalist, and eventually the backing vocalist became the lead singer because the lead singers weren't that good. And then realizing, in later years that like a singing drummer isn't really the best way to present this music that I'm trying to do, I picked up the bass, which is sort of like playing the drums with strings and being able to stand up. And so I started writing on the bass and singing, and I think that's kind of what separates us from a lot of the other bands within our genre is, as the primary songwriter in this band, there are songs that I write based around a drum groove because I'm a drummer, or a bass line, or a guitar line because, bass and guitar are very similar with the riffs and all.
Okay.
So I think we have an advantage in that respect, in that we can come at songwriting from many different angles.
Well, yeah, having a multi-instrumentalist be the primary songwriter, yeah, I mean, that's a big advantage.
I think the guys think it's a blessing and a curse because, when you have the poor drummer in the band, when I look at him and I say, "Hey, Eric, I have this idea," he basically knows the road we're about to go down,
It's going to be a challenge for him.
Yeah.
So where were you from originally? I know the band is based out of New York City.
I'm from New Jersey originally.
I lived in Jersey for 16 years, something like that. Yeah.
Oh, you lived in Jersey as well?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Are you still in Jersey?
No, I'm in Virginia now. I'm 75 miles due west of D.C., but
Oh, nice. I love Virginia. Virginia's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm in the Winchester.
Really pretty.
Yeah. But, I mean, I lived in a pretty rural part of Jersey, too. So it was central Jersey, right on the border of Flemington, or Hunterdon and Somerset counties, right on Flemington, Somerville area. So
I know the area, yeah.
So awesome. So, all right. So, I'm familiar with your stomping grounds.
Yes, absolutely.
How old were you when you started getting bands together and deciding you wanted to play out live?
Well, I had always, when we would write stories in like third grade about what we wanted to be when we grew up, I wanted to be Peter Pan, I wanted to be a rock star. So I've always wanted to do this. And at the moment I started to be able to play drums, it was just a no-brainer. Like, let me find, I knew a couple guys, that they thought they could play guitar and bass or whatever. So, we had bands probably starting around junior high and just continued.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with the stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Try doing that in person. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to Performance Anxiety listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. That's betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. What were you listening to at this time that was really influencing you?
Like I said, particularly my oldest sister had quite an influence on me in terms of music. And she was, bless you, she was into older stuff for her time. And it was Black Sabbath and
nice.
And Led Zeppelin. And those were the first bands that I really had ever heard, like rock and roll bands. I would always tell people like Keith Moon and John Bonham were my drum teachers, because that's what I listened to. And then as I started to find my own way, I was really drawn toward actually Duran Duran, much to the chagrin of my sisters who weren't really into that stuff. It wasn't macho enough or tough enough or whatever. But, I used to, sing Duran Duran songs into the mirror and pretend to be Simon Le Bon. And something about the music, it was melodic, very melodic to me and very rhythmic. And yet it was poppy, so it was very accessible.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't overly dire. And I think, as a kid, for as cool as I thought Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin were, they go to really, really dark places.
Yeah.
That sometimes, can be tough for the mentality of a younger kid. And not that Duran Duran don't have dark moments as well. It's just, I think the pop element, the excitement and the energy, and it just seemed, I don't know. I was just drawn into that direction. And from there, it was like a gateway drug to The Cure and all of like that post-punk stuff, Echo and the Bunnymen.
Oh yeah.
And the early Cult.
Okay.
And I was, those vocalists are very much in my wheelhouse in terms of the way I sing and my range. So I really identified with that stuff. But I like a lot of different rock stuff. I wouldn't just pigeonhole myself as like a new wave guy or whatever, but that was the first like serious flirtation I had with like really deciding this is the musical direction I want to go. And so those were the earliest, like those guys laid the groundwork for what I'm doing now, I think.
I remember listening to early Duran Duran, when it was new, and it was just, it was one of those things that I was also big into metal. Like Megadeth's Peace Sells was one of my favorite albums. I got it when it was brand new, but then I also got Duran Duran 7 and the Ragged Tiger, around the same time.
That's cool.
And
so you're open-minded.
I was, and now my friends were not so much. So and they were all metalheads. So like Duran Duran was something I would listen to, but I would put the cassette in like a Metallica cassette and just kind of hide it when I went to school. So, what'd you listen to? I got Kill 'Em All. Oh, cool. Okay. And then, but inside is a cassette of like Arena, the live shit, the Arena, the live album.
Yeah, Arena. Yeah. That's so interesting.
It wasn't an easy time to be as open-minded musically back in the mid-'80s.
Well, the 80s was such, I really, it was before my time, but I mean, I look back at the music that was happening, and it was really, I think, the most diverse time for the radio and the most diverse time for rock and roll, because you had heavy metal bands, you had just straight up rock and roll, you had new wave, you had dance, you even had rap sneaking its way in there, and you had R&B, all in the charts. And you could put on a concert like a Live Aid where you had all of those artists, and they were equally capable of capturing an audience. They were all great live players. And there has never been another time, I think, in the history of popular music where it's been like that. So I think the 80s is very unique. The 80s gets a bad rep because a lot of, I think, the established 70s stars sold out in the 80s and did their sellout albums.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as diversity of music that was available on the charts, I mean, it's nothing.
That's one of the things that I really liked about your music is you can hear the mix of influences. I mean, it sounds like an 80s mixtape. I mean, I can hear influences from new wave, metal, pop, goth. I can hear shoegaze. I can hear all these awesome influences in one album from you. And it's just, that's when I mentioned earlier that it was making me feel nostalgic. That's why. It's because I can hear everything that I grew up listening to in one or two songs and throughout the whole album. But in one song, you'll have a different, almost a metal solo in a new wave sounding song. It's so cool. Well,
thank you. We're trying to take everything and create our own by kind of putting everything into a blender, I guess. So that's hence pop art, right?
How old were you when you really decided, well, this is something that I want to do. I want to make music. I want to try to do this for a living.
I mean, I've always, it's just always been the thing. I mean, I've gone to school and whatnot, but like, this has always been, my passion and my goal, what I've set my sights on. So, I mean, I couldn't really put a timetable on it.
There was no like light bulb moment when things switched to, hey, this is great. It was just always there.
Yeah. And when things started to pop with the record deals, it wasn't like, oh wow, this is now I want to do this. Okay. It was always like, well, of course, like this is the next logical step to things, to getting to where we need to be. It was never like, okay, now I think I could really focus on this. It was always like I was already focusing on it. So
the first band that I, in my research, went back and could find for me that had videos and things I could research was Starbolt 9.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the first band that you started really recording with?
Wow, you really did your research. How did you find that?
Just a whole hell of a lot of rabbit holes.
I'm impressed. Yes, that was, and it was the same keyboardist actually, Jeff Binder. So yeah, that was like the first incarnation of everything. Yeah,
because you guys did some really awesome covers. Jane's Addiction's 3 Days, the Cult's Spirit Walker. Just some awesome stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, that was fun. Matt Pinfield actually introduced us that night. That night?
Oh man,
that was a good.
Yeah, you guys were wearing some pretty wild costumes.
Oh yeah, that was actually okay. So the show where we did those covers was a Halloween show.
Okay.
We do try to dress up for our shows, but not to that degree.
Not the enormous hat and.
Yeah. That was a wild one.
All right, so I've got another question about a video I saw, and I kind of wanted to find out what your connection is to this, because I did see you doing "Satellite of Love" with the Lou Reed Crew band.
Gone way up to Mars. Soon it will be.
Yes.
So everybody in that band is some former tech of Lou Reed. You're singing in it. So what's your connection with everybody?
Well, my connection is with the organizer of that event. Is a promoter and organizer who's booked me many times.
Okay.
And she knows that I'm a huge Lou Reed fan and Velvet Underground fan. And so when she was putting the night together, the Lou crew, they were doing this sort of thing where they wanted to do a set, and they would have guest singers get up, different personalities, nightlife personalities from New York City. So she chose me to get up and do a few of those songs. So that's kind of how that materialized. That was a lot of fun.
It looked like it was a lot of fun, man. You look like you're having a blast up there.
I was. That was a fun one.
So how did Starbolt 9 become the Ritualists? Is there anything in between, or was it a clean break?
Nothing really in between. It was just a decision to change it up, to part ways with some band members, and to kind of go in a different direction. I think that project had sort of gone as far as we could take it with the personnel we had, and we just decided to just tweak things a little bit, and we thought a name change was necessary, or was warranted.
How did you come up with the Ritualists?
We were thinking about names, and a story came up. A friend of mine was describing a night he had. I think he went to see, I don't know if it was the Stone Roses or some band that we all loved, and he was like, and I love the Stone Roses myself, and he was like, he's like, I went out there and I'm in the crowd and everybody, knew every word. And he's like, I'm thinking to myself, like, this isn't just entertainment. He's like, this is a spiritual experience. He's like, it's like church. He's like, but different. Everybody's on the same wavelength. We're all like throwing our hearts behind the same sort of ideas. He's like, the whole thing was sort of like a ritual, the whole rock and roll performance, the whole thing. So I thought to myself, it has a lot of interesting connotations, things you can do with it graphically, visually. I think it fits for how much the amount of soul that I put into the project. So I thought it was fitting.
Now, speaking of like you're saying, the graphics and the artwork, I love the artwork on both albums. Now, the first one, I'm with the Painted People.
Yes.
I love that cover. That is so cool. Who did that?
Thank you. A great artist. Her name is Brianna Rose DiFelice. She's actually based out of Brooklyn, and she put that design together specifically for the album. And we were throwing things. It was like it was me, the manager, and the label were throwing ideas around with her. And I was like, let's try to have something somewhat tribal looking, but somewhat, futuristic and somewhat gothy and somewhat this, and like, and she came up with this design, which we all thought was pretty cool and striking. And that was her thing,
It fits with the sound of the album too.
With that damage comes an unending devotion. The magic you provide is tonic for my pride. Starry night that I met you, frozen in your disguise. Starry night to forget you.
It's really, it's got it. I mean, there's such an everything of the 80s is in your sound. That album cover reminds me of some of like my favorite album covers of the 80s. It's just, it kind of fits. It's got that, 90125, but still a little Genesis Abacab kind of look to it. It's just, It's really, really fitting. Fits the music perfectly.
Thank you. I'm glad it did the trick.
Has the songwriting changed a lot between the first and second albums? I mean, are you, I guess, primary songwriter for the whole band?
Yes. And I'd like to believe I'm evolving. I think the songs are definitely different. I think we've gone in a slightly different direction, but I think it's still, it fits. I think we could get away with it. Any songs from the first or the second albums in the same set list. I don't think it sounds like a shock. It would be a shock to anyone's ears.
Right. Yeah. When you're bringing songs in for the band, are you directing them, like orchestrating them what to do, or are you open to letting them interpret the songs in their own way?
I think it's a bit of both. Okay. It's usually I'll come to the band with either a riff and chords with the vocal melodies on top and lyrics, or sometimes it's just a chord progression with some lyrics. And, depending on the part, I'll be like, hey, take this and run with it. Or I'll tell the guitarist, here's my very basic line idea. Make it pretty, make it sound professional. My keyboardist is great at carving out like interesting chord voicings and whatnot. So, I'll play something, even if it's just rooted out on the bass, and he will, help determine, oh, this is a minor seventh with a G extended, whatever the heck.
Man.
And, he pieces all that together. So,
I bring them. Jeez.
It depends on the song. Some of the songs can't come together more fully formed than others. And there are songs where the band gets inspired and goes off on a tangent, and it totally works, and it's kept in the song,
Now, I did read that one of your favorite albums is Verve's Storm in Heaven.
Oh yeah,
that is possibly my favorite album of all time.
Oh well, so I could see how you would like us.
Yeah, I absolutely adore that album. I still listen to it constantly. I got it when it was new, so it's.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was amazing, and I can really hear it on the drums in the song Rattles. That's, that's Pete Salisbury. That is definitely a Pete Salisbury sound. Absolutely love it. But one of the things that I thought was really cool was She's the Sun. It's got this awesome, like, Moroccan, like, cashmere type of quality to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the things that I thought was really cool about the album was, all right, so I know you've got these 80s influences, but you're also bringing in like 70s hard rock to it as well. And it's just, I don't know, every song is just, I don't know what to expect because there's so many different sounds that you're drawing from, and it's really incredible, very impressive.
She's the sun in my eyes, and I can't escape her. There's no other world.
Thank you. It's interesting about the Verve for, I played the bass on both of the records, and I played the drums on the last record,
Okay.
the recorded drums. And when we were sending references, sometimes the engineer or the producer will ask for references. We always reference that Verve record, particularly for the bass and the drum sounds and the vocal, the ambient vocals, that reverb, how they got away with that level of reverb is great, because they would not, I don't think they would, most labels would allow a modern rock record to come out with that level of effect on the vocal.
Oh God, no! And I know
It's really cool.
Yeah, I remember reading that he was not confident, and so he's like, "Yeah, just bury my vocals in the mix, and I'll be happy with that." And then,
well, the vocals sound great.
I love it, man. I love it, and each of their albums sounds a little bit different. So that's another, maybe possibly another thing that I can hear from them in your music is that the albums definitely sound different, but each song sounds quite different from any of the others on the album. It's really quite a feat to be able to do that.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. And I'm with the Painted People. That song is amazing. Going back to the Verve influence, to me, I don't know if you ever got the re-releases of the Verve's albums, those big box sets they got, like the 3, 4.
I did not.
Oh man, you have to get them because they're incredible. I'm with the Painted People sounds like some of the heavier, less blissed out B-sides to Storm in Heaven, maybe even a Northern Soul. But what I like about it is what we were kind of just talking about, the vocals. Richard Ashcroft's vocals in the first album are down in the mix, heavy reverb.
Yep.
Yours are so much more dynamic, and I really, really like that. That song came from your Starbolt 9 days, though, right?
Yeah, that's an older song that we remixed and reworked for the album. We thought the name change sort of occurred, and then the record deal kind of happened shortly after that. And what I did was I had sent them an EP with 5 songs, and they had said that 2 of the songs, which is Rattles and I'm with the Painted People, they were like, let's put these on the debut album.
Oh,
so
awesome.
Yes.
Well, that and I'll be honest with you, one of my favorites on that album is Sunset. That's just such a beautiful song. There's so much going on. That wah that you've got at the end that just sits just below the surface, that's amazing. That's the kind of stuff I love.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we tried to be really, we like the psychedelic stuff, and that was actually the last song I wrote for the record. It was written when the album was almost finished. I was like, let's have like a kind of a quiet ballad that sort of turns into chaos. So that's kind of the direction we went with that.
That's the kind of stuff I love. I love stuff like that quiet that just builds and builds and builds, and You don't, we almost don't even realize it. It just suddenly becomes this big, noisy song.
Yeah.
And now you've got a new album, and
Yes.
Baroque and Bleeding. Something that I noticed in this album is that you've definitely got, as you mentioned, the Simon Le Bon influence in your singing. And I hear it so much more in Baroque and Bleeding than I did in Painted People. And I love it.
Interesting.
I love it, actually. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
Is he an influence that you're consciously trying to emulate a little bit? Or is it just he's been there the whole time and that's just kind of what you do?
I think it just comes out of me based, just by osmosis. Like, it came into me. I mean, it just comes up. It's just sort of part of the way I approach, the way I attack the vocal. I mean, I try not to sound exactly like anyone else, but definitely the way, particularly the way he attacks certain melodies, and that goes along with the way you actually say certain words when you're singing, because they'll trigger certain dynamics of your voice. Okay. So, I mean, he kind of like, in a way, was like my vocal coach. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, I've been doing it that way since I was a kid, and certain things triggered, I guess, more so than other things.
Well, and you've got that quality and the tone to your voice, which is awesome. I mean, God, that whole band, I know they're nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah. But to me, they're just, I don't know, for a band that I still feel like they're kind of underappreciated. Yeah, completely. I mean, especially as individuals.
They could have been nominated years ago to the Hall of Fame. This is the first time they've been nominated. It's travesty, actually.
Well, especially as individual musicians. I mean, Andy Taylor, I just thought that dude was just an incredible guitarist.
Mm-hmm. Bassist is great, John Taylor.
Yeah. And then the third Taylor, was it Roger, the drummer?
Roger, he's the drummer. He's a great drummer. I mean, the whole band, they're phenomenal. And we were honored recently, actually last week. Simon has a show on Sirius XM called Whoosh. Okay. And they played a song of ours from the new record. Oh, wow. And Simon gave us a really nice introduction. I had done an interview with Sirius, and one of the DJs, Lori Majewski, really dug the band, and we got into speaking about Duran Duran, and she was like, I'm going to give this to Simon. He's going to play this on his show. And I was like, I took it for what I heard. I wasn't sure it was actually going to happen. Yeah. And it turns out it happened, and he played the song, and they posted a really cool Instagram thing about us. And what I dug about Simon was that our label sent out 3 singles for him for basically radio to play. They're Baroque and Bleeding, the song Monsters, and Of Anonymity, a song called Forbidden Love, which was not given to him.
Unafraid of fire and brimstone, a slave to their empty demands. Forbidden love, embracing my home and distorting my God. Forbidden love, embracing my home and distorting my God.
And he made a point of saying on the radio show, like, this is my favorite Ritualist song. So, like, he didn't want them to just spoon feed him. He really, because the whole premise of that show is Simon's picking out new talent that he likes. So he wanted it to be something that he chose. And that was really an honor for us, obviously.
That's funny, because I actually wrote down that what I liked about some of the stuff was on the new album is that it kind of sounds like different eras of Simon Le Bon's vocals. Like Forbidden Love sounds like something he would do on an early Duran Duran album, while Dead Eyes could be later Le Bon.
Interesting.
Because and that's just my untrained ears. I don't know. I'm not Simon Le Bon.
I think also the earlier stuff was a bit punkier. Oh yeah. And I think that Forbidden Love is very much a post-punk vibe. Dead Eyes is definitely a bit more ballad, softer, and I think Duran Duran got into those territories a little bit later. So that would maybe make sense. Yeah.
The horrors that bind the blind, feel her pull like the ocean tide. Captive to her dead eyes. Those dead eyes have played in my mind on repeat. Those dead eyes have played in my mind.
So I know for every songwriter, there's songs that come really quickly, and then some songs that are puzzles that take a while to work out. What was the easiest song to write, and which one was the hardest one to write?
Okay. Let me think about that. I have to think about the tracks on the record too. Okay, the one that took the longest was Monsters. I had that chorus laying around forever,
Oh,
and I liked the chorus.
I won't let you run from monsters that come. Truth that you ignore, truth that you abhor. I won't let you run from monsters that come. Truth that you ignore, truth that you abhor.
And I was never happy with any of the verses that I had for it. I don't know that they measure up to the chorus. I still don't know if it does. I feel like that song is just never going. I'm never going to be entirely happy with that song.
yeah.
But it was just the point. I was like, you know what, this is work. This seems to work. So let's record it and try it. So that was the one that I would say took the most to write, took the longest to write. As far as the easiest one to write, and it's funny because it came to me quickly, but it was very, very difficult to record, and that was the actual song Baroque and Bleeding.
Oh, really?
Baroque and Bleeding, most of that song, and I know this is going to sound very pretentious, but most of the concepts behind that song came to me in a dream.
Oh, wow.
After having a conversation with a bunch of people. So I kind of just woke up and there it was.
She's a princess in a court of lies. It's a fantasy you won't revise. No longer clinging to a tie that binds. Real freedom. We're Baroque and bleeding under gray skies of poetic rise. We're Baroque and bleeding.
But recording it was very, very tricky because I put all kinds of electronic drum loops together, and then I played organic drums on top of it, and crazy gang vocal, and there's a super, super high falsetto harmony on top of it that I had to sing on top of a million other voices. So it was really a project, which was, rewarding in the end. I really like the way it came out, but that one actually was written the fastest. So
I'd love hearing stories like that. I love to find out about the process of writing songs, because I don't write songs. I don't play music, but that's what this podcast is about. I want to know the behind the scenes stuff. This album came together during the pandemic. I mean, I guess because we're still basically in it. So,
Yeah.
But
sadly, yeah.
yeah. Did it change your writing process at all? And have you had a chance to play any of these songs live yet?
Well, it changed the writing process in that I became the drummer.
Okay.
So I hadn't been drumming regularly. So to prepare for this record, I spent a few weeks just practicing drums with the different BPM clicks in my ears and coming up with the drum parts that I wanted to track.
Okay.
So there was that element. So the album definitely has a different vibe because I'm the drummer on it in that respect. The way it was recorded is also a little bit strange because our label was kind enough to give us access to a beautiful studio in Times Square.
Oh, nice.
So I was driving to Times Square in the middle of the pandemic. It was like a scene out of like Vanilla Sky where it's empty.
Yeah.
Okay. I had my my choice of any parking spot I wanted, parked right in front of the studio. The police were not giving out tickets. They let me know that actually because I asked them.
Oh, no.
And I would walk up and it was just me and an engineer. And I would go behind there. Okay, now we're going to record the bass. Now we're going to record the drums, and we're going to send the tracks to the guitar player and then bring them in. And, you know, it was interesting that the album started to we kind of finished things up with the album as restrictions sort of started to go by the wayside a little bit.
Okay.
And then, of course, we were lucky enough to get Ed Buller aboard to agree to mix the record, which was totally utter shock for us and exciting. And that's kind of the way it went down, you know.
So you're basically doing most of the instrumentation on the actual recorded album.
I'm doing the drums, the bass, and the vocals.
Okay. So
keyboards and guitar, band members.
And have you had a chance to play any of these songs live yet?
Sorry, forgot about that.
No. I hate asking two questions at once, but sometimes my mind just
no,
craps
cool.
them out.
What we were given the opportunity. We did once the restrictions started to subside. One of our favorite venues in New York, the Bowery Electric, offered us a show on a Saturday night, like a showcase night for the record. The record had not yet been released.
Okay.
Everybody had a plexiglass booth, you know, with barriers. And now this is formerly a club where everyone would be on top of each other on the dance floor, you know, hanging on the stage. It was transformed into this futuristic looking cocktail lounge.
Wow.
And we just got up and we performed the record, and it was actually one of my favorite shows we've ever done. It was very surreal. And a lot of people came up to me and they were like, you know, we're used to seeing your band in a setting where talking over people, ordering drinks, running back and forth. It was really nice to just be able to sit down. You know, they had a waitress coming around taking orders, and, you know, just hanging out at a table with close friends and just enjoying the stuff over, you know, it gave us a new appreciation for the music. So that was a really fun show. And it was a great crowd. We actually sold the venue out.
Oh, nice.
And we've done about 3 or 4 shows since then, all in the New York area. I don't know that we're even able to we're working on some tour stuff in the early spring that I hope will happen. Fingers crossed. But yeah, so we played the stuff out, and all of the songs are performed live. Baroque and Bleeding is performed.
Wow.
So that's been the way we've been doing it, you know.
When you were writing the songs and recording stuff for Baroque and Bleeding, being that it was in the middle of a pandemic where you couldn't get everybody in the same room and didn't have a chance to play them live, did you write them thinking about having to play them live, or did you write them and record them and say, I'm going to record it the way I want it, and we'll figure out how to play them live later?
B.
Okay.
Yeah. I am never going to say, let's not record this because we might not be able to pull it off live.
Excellent.
My first inclination is, let's make this thing sound as amazing as possible on the album, and we'll figure things out after.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember I read an interview with Jimi Hendrix where they were talking, because a lot of his recorded stuff is totally crazy. Queen as well. Yeah. But Hendrix had a great philosophy. He was like, live is live and studio is studio. And I don't even attempt to try to recreate 5 guitar parts or something live. I give the people a totally different experience. And I think that's kind of cool. And I think the Verve do that as well, because I've seen the Verve when they got back together. I saw them. And they kind of jam a little bit live, and they improvise, and Ashcroft changes his lyrics and it goes off on tangents. And that's kind of what makes it exciting to see them. They don't just get up on stage like, here is our record, and just play it note for note. I mean, that's impressive too, but I kind of prefer the former. So that's sort of the attitude that I took with this. And luckily enough, the musicians in my band are so great that there really isn't a song that's an issue live. So we're able to do it.
That's awesome. And I'm jealous of you seeing the Verve during the 4th tour. I got a chance to see them once, and it was between A Storm in Heaven and Northern Soul. So they're
oh wow,
yeah, they're on the Lollapalooza tour in '94 on the 2nd stage.
Oh my God!
And that's one of the only reasons I went to go to that Lollapalooza. I went to the '92 and the '94. So
where did you see them at Lollapalooza?
Let's see, and it was in Philadelphia at Franklin Park. It was it was the year Smashing Pumpkins was a headliner. Breeders, Beastie Boys,
How were the Verve?
They were amazing. I love the Smashing Pumpkins, but Verve was the reason I went to that Lollapalooza. And
they were on the second stage.
They were on the second stage. I'm trying to remember. It was, I don't even think they headlined the second stage. I think they were second from the headline. I think the Flaming Lips were the headliners on the second stage. And Verve played right before the Flaming Lips.
That's one heck of a second stage.
Yeah, it was amazing. Now it was 94. So Flaming Lips, I mean, I think the only thing they had out at that, well, their song was that Vaseline, so she don't use jelly. Yep. They hadn't exploded into who they were going to be yet. Neither had the Verve, but I was such a huge Verve fan. I'm like, you know, and my funds were limited. So 94, so I was 21. So, you know, I couldn't go see him in New York or Philly or every time, whenever they came over, and it was no internet. So, you know, if I had to look at magazines and try to figure out when the hell they were playing. So
that's amazing.
It was wild. That and the 92 one with Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, Ice Cube, the Chili Peppers, but I don't like the Chili Peppers, so I left. So they came on, I heard one song. And I'm like,
not my favorite either, but yeah.
I heard one song. They came out with stupid light bulbs on their head. They played one song. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. And we left. But they played at Montage Mountain. So it was at the bottom of a ski slope. It's really wild.
Wow.
So that was the only time I got a chance to see the Verve. So I wanted to go see them with the fourth tour. Well, with every tour, but
I would trade Verve experiences with you any day of the week. I much rather would have seen them play Storm in Heaven stuff.
Yeah. They played a lot of Northern Soul stuff, but it hadn't been released yet. So I was I'm sitting there like, what are they? Is this stuff off the early? Because I didn't have everything that they had released at that point. So I was like, is this stuff that they've released and I just don't know about, or it's just new? I don't know what I'm hearing. So
History is a great song.
Yeah. Oh man. This Is Music. I love their more psychedelic stuff, their noisier stuff like Stormy Clouds.
Yep.
All that stuff. It's just, oh gosh. Actually, where the hell was I in my notes now too? One of the things I wanted to mention was I love the fact that you guys seem to have a sense of humor about some of the music. Not every song is like some existential crisis or sad love song. You got a sense of humor, like Mothman. My youngest daughter is a huge Mothman. She says she's a Mothman enthusiast. So I played that for her. She loved it.
Oh, that's cool.
It going back to the 80s. It reminded me of songs like All You Zombies by the Hooters. You know, songs where they weren't taking themselves super seriously. It was just a fun song.
Yes, totally. We also have, there's a lot of sarcasm in my lyrics. The Illusion of Poverty has that as well. I wrote that one after a discussion we had about the grunge era in music.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of what it's about the grunge heroes who hated being on stage and hated being famous and hated having videos on rotation on MTV. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're calling MTV, asking why their video isn't played enough on MTV.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the premise of that song is.
I love it.
You can pretend you're swimming in the mud. You can pretend you've no one left to love. That's how it starts when there's nowhere left to burn. Dark fairy tale to overturn. I'll sigh as you enshrine your poverty with mine. Your poverty with mine. I'll sigh
I know exactly what you're talking about, and a lot of those bands, one in particular, lost me on their third album. I was a huge Pearl Jam fan for 10. I love Versus. Vitology came out, and I'm like, no. And they never won me back.
The first album was, I think, kind of written for Andrew Wood to sing or something, right?
Yep.
It was very psychedelic, and then they became like Neil Young, Overdrive.
Yeah,
and I like Neil Young too, but it wasn't what I think Pearl Jam originally presented themselves as. So
no, exactly. I was a huge Mother Love Bone fan. There've been a couple albums, like Yield was pretty good, No Code was all right, but after, I think Binaural was the last one. I bought that and I liked one song. I'm like, I am not wasting any more money on this. I don't know. They lost.
I think they intentionally took, their own. They kind of took their own path, and you have to credit them for that. They kind of put their money where their mouths are, and they fought Ticketmaster at the height of their fame. Right, they couldn't even really tour when they were in the top of the world. As a matter of fact, I'll say, like, definitely my song "The Illusion of Poverty," I was not thinking of Pearl Jam because they weren't hating. They weren't hating on capitalism while having their tour sponsored by Pepsi at the time.
True.
And playing shows for Ticketmaster. So they actually, when they're staring at their shoes and scowling, like, they lived up to that, I guess. But many other bands did not.
Okay. All right. You make a good point. I rescind my criticism. All right. You swayed me. I still don't like Vitology, but still. So what are the plans for the band now? I mean, if you guys, you mentioned you're hoping to get out and tour. Do you have any dates set up, or?
We're setting some stuff up for the end of April that, you could check out our website, theritualists.com. We're on Instagram, _ritualists. We're on Facebook. You can Google us. We're on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Amazon Music, all of that stuff. And the announcements will occur on those respective platforms. We have a video for Broken Bleeding that's out on YouTube. We'll probably be putting out another video for another song in the near future. And, we're just going to try to line up some dates to support the record.
Well, I've enjoyed the videos. Like the one for Ice Flower. That's insane. That video is just crazy.
It is insane.
I was not expecting that.
Not my idea. I can't take credit for that at all.
It is a great song, too. I've really, really enjoyed going back and listening to the Painted People after. And it's kind of a weird, because I listened to Broken Bleeding first and then went back and listened to Painted People. But, oh God, they're just great companions to each other. They complement each other so well.
Thanks so much. You have great taste in music, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I will say the same for you. I feel like we could do an episode of just riffing music off of each other.
100%. 100%. Anytime. Let me know.